In this project, we're going to create a multi-view drawing. This drawing contains the orthographic views of this object, referred to here as the locator design. I'm going to start a new drawing accessing my Q New from my Quick Access toolbar. And in my Create New Drawing dialog box, I'm going to start from scratch and choose Imperial for working with inches. Going down here on top of my grid button on the status bar, I'm going to right click and choose Settings. I'm going to make sure that both my grid spacing and my snap spacing are set to 0.5, and we'll turn the grid and the snap on. Next, we're going to create some layers. So I'm going to open my Layer Property Manager, and starting from scratch, I only have one layer available, and that's my zero layer. It's not a good practice to draw on my zero layer, so I'm going to create a new layer using the button here, and this layer is going to be for construction lines. I'm going to set the color. Right now, by default, it's set to white and continuous, and we're going to leave that. Now, when I pick a white color, it's actually black if I'm using a white background. If I was using a black background, it would be white. And we're going to add another layer. This one's going to be for my object. And this one, I'm going to choose the color as blue. And again, my line type is continuous. With these two layers created, I'm going to close. I'm going to change to my construction layer. And also, before I start drawing, I'm going to go down to the status bar in my drawing aids and make sure that grid and snap are the only two drawing aids I have turned on. We're going to use construction lines to rough out the location of our three views in our orthographic projection. You notice that all of the objects are in alignment, that the height in the front view is the same as the height in the right side view, that the length in the front view is the same as the length in the top view. To rough out the location of these views, I'm going to establish a construction line along the left side and a construction line along the bottom. We'll then use our offset commands to lay out, starting from the left, the distance that represents the length of the object, the space in between the views, and then the width of the object in the right-hand view. Starting with this bottom line, I'll offset up the height of the object in the front view, the distance in between, and the width of the view in the top view. From those constructions, we can then fill in our object. So to start, from the flyout on the bottom of my draw panel, I'm going to choose a construction line, and near the lower left corner I'm going to click once, and it takes 2 points to establish a construction line. So I'll click again, making that line vertical. Now I'm going to turn 90 degrees to the right and click once more to establish my horizontal construction line. Now I'm going to use an offset, and I'm going to set the offset for 5. I'm going to click first on my line that is a vertical line and click on the right side. That establishes the length of the object. I'm going to hit the space bar to end that command and hit the space bar again to bring it back. The distance in between the views is 1.5, so I'll set that from the keyboard, and I'm going to offset that line again for the distance between the views, end and restart, and set it for 3, and this is the width of the object in the right side view. I'm going to end, hit spacebar to restart again. Now the height of the object in the front view is 2.5, so I will offset this horizontal line up 2.5, end and restart, and reset it to 1.5 for the space between the views, and restart, and the top view is 3 inches wide, and so I'll offset that. We can now see the precise location of the front view, the top view, and the right side view. Before I start drawing the boundaries of the object, I'm going to change on my layer drop down to the object layer. And also down here on the status bar, my object snap button, I'm going to right click and choose settings, and I'm going to clear all and choose a set of object snaps: endpoint, center, intersection, extension, and tangent as a basic set of running object snaps, and I'll turn these on. Say OK. Using a line command, I'm now going to snap to the intersections of my construction lines to establish the edges of the objects of in each of the views. Hit enter to end and enter to bring back. Here I'm establishing the edges of the top view, and hit enter to bring it back, and the right side view by snapping to each intersection point. I'll end that command. And now I don't need my construction lines, so I'm going to, from my drop down layer box, I'm going to choose to turn off that layer. You notice how the light bulb goes out. And when I click back on the screen, those lines are no longer visible. I'm now going to edit the front view. I'll start by using an offset, and I'm going to set the offset value to 1. This left edge I'm going to offset in 1 inch, and the bottom edge offset up 1 inch. Hit enter to end the offset command. Now I'm going to trim off the lines I don't need. So I'm going to activate trim, and instead of choosing individual objects as cutting edges, I'm going to hit enter, which lets all objects be cutting edges. Also, I'm going to toggle off the snap mode to make it easier to select individual lines, and then trim off the portions of the lines that I no longer need. Now I need to project some of this information into the top view. I have some tools to assist me. Down here on my drawing aids, I have Object Snap turned on, and next to it I have Object Snap Tracking. I'm going to toggle that on. And now when I start a line, I need to project this edge into the top view. Notice that when I hesitate for a moment over this object snap, and it shows its tooltip to let me know what it is, when I start moving away, I have a projected dotted line, a tracking line that's tracking that point into another view. When I get up here to the top, I can see my intersection object snap light up. So I can click the mouse and it snaps my line to that next object. Also, I'm going to track up to this side, and where that edge would intersect this side of the line, I'll click, and now I've established this edge in my top view. I'm going to continue with the top view by using offset. The distance is still set for 1 inch, so I'll hit enter, and I'm going to offset this top line in towards the center and this bottom edge in towards the center. In the top view, we have to cut these corners off at an angle, and we'll look at a couple of ways that we can do this. I'm going to turn dynamic input on, so I get my dynamic input information, and start a line command. Now, I'm going to hold the shift button down and right click the mouse to bring up my object snap overrides. Even though I have running object snaps turned on, I can choose from this list for a single use of any of these object snaps or tools. I'm going to choose from and snap to this corner of the top view. From here I can enter a relative amount. So I want to move 0 on the X, and I can tab to my Y, and here I want to enter 0.25 and hit enter. Notice that starts my line 0.25 above the corner. Next I'm going to establish this point down here. So I'm going to again hold the shift button down, right click and choose from on my overrides, and choose that same point again as a starting point. And again we can enter a relative coordinate value. So we'll say at, I'm going to enter negative 1.75 and comma 0 on the y and hit enter. And it establishes that point. So I'll hit enter again. And I've established my chamfer line. Now I'll use a trim. Hit the space bar to let everything be a cutting edge. I'm going to turn off my snap and trim those lines. Another way that I could chamfer this corner would be to use my chamfer command. On the fly out from fillet, I also have an option of chamfer. On my chamfer, I need to choose my method. So I'm going to down arrow with dynamic input, and I have choices. I know the distances from the corner for this chamfer, so I'm going to choose distance. And my first distance we know is 0.25, so I'll enter. And the second distance is 1.75. And now it wants me to select the first line. I'll select the line with the distance that I first entered, 0.25 on this line, 0.75 on this line, and that automatically creates the chamfer and trims off the lines I don't need. I need to establish the center point of the hole in the top view. To do this, I'm going to use a center diameter circle, and I'm going to use my object snap tracking along with its built-in snap from direct distance function. I need a midpoint. I'm going to go down here on the status bar on my object snaps, right click, and you can see which object snaps are turned on in my running object snaps, and I'm going to add midpoint to the list. From this midpoint, after I've acquired that point, I'm going to start tracking to the left along a horizontal line. I'm now going to enter the distance to the center of the circle, which is 2.25, and hit enter. That's now established that point, and it's asking me for the diameter of the circle, which I know is 1. So I can use my dynamic input and direct distance entry to track from a snap point to start a line. We'll now trim off the excess lines in the top view. So I'm going to use my trim. I'll hit the space bar to let everything be a cutting edge and trim out the excess lines. There's some small notches in the corners of this top view, so I'm going to zoom here, start a line, and I'm going to track from this corner. I'm going to track to the right 0.25. I haven't clicked the mouse yet. I'm just tracking to establish a starting point. Now I'm going to turn ortho on for vertical lines and enter 0.5. And now I want a snap perpendicular to this line over here. I'm going to hold down the shift button, right click, and choose perpendicular from my object snap overrides and click and end the line there. Now, because this is a symmetrical object, I can project this notch onto the other side by using a mirror. I'm going to click on mirror and window around to pick up these two lines. I'm done selecting objects and I need a mirror line. I'm going to click from the midpoint of this line to the midpoint of this line and hit enter to not erase the source objects. So that mirrors that notch over. Lastly, I can trim these out. I'll select trim, hit enter to let everything be a cutting edge, and trim the corners. To continue with this project, please go on to Part 2.